The first night I stepped inside, I knew something was wrong. The silence wasn't normal silence. It was watching me. I was assigned to a remote graveyard, just outside a small, forgotten town. There was no one to greet me, no one to show me around. Just a cold wind blowing through the trees, carrying with it a faint scent of decay. I remember feeling uneasy the moment I stepped out of my truck. The ground beneath my boots felt damp, the air thick, as if the earth was holding its breath. The graveyard itself seemed older than anything I'd ever seen. Weathered gravestones, cracked and moss-covered, stood like silent sentinels. Some were so ancient, the names had worn away, leaving only smooth stone faces staring up at the sky. It was beautiful, in a twisted, haunting kind of way. But the beauty was overshadowed by an oppressive sense of dread. The caretaker who was supposed to meet me had disappeared. All I knew was that my job was to maintain the graveyard for the night. Simple, right? Just make sure everything was in order, lock up, and leave by morning. But when the town's mayor handed me the keys, she seemed uneasy. She told me there was one rule I had to follow. Never go near the old mausoleum in the far corner, she said, her voice low, almost like she was afraid someone might hear. The dead don't like it. At first, I thought it was just superstition, some silly old town tale passed down through the years, but something in her eyes made me second guess. I shrugged it off. Rules are rules, right? I walked around the graveyard, trying to ignore the nagging feeling in the back of my mind. It was strange how the air felt so still, almost as if the wind was holding its breath. The trees didn't rustle. The birds didn't sing. Nothing. Just an eerie silence. By the time the sun dipped behind the trees, casting long shadows across the graves, I felt the weight of the place settle in. I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. It was as if something, or someone, was watching me. As the moon began to rise, I went about my duties, cleaning the paths, trimming the weeds, straightening the gravestones. The sound of my footsteps echoed across the empty land, too loud in the silence. That's when I saw it. The mausoleum, standing in the farthest corner of the graveyard. It was more like a temple than a crypt, built from stone, overgrown with ivy, its dark windows staring back at me like eyes. The door was cracked open, just a tiny bit. I couldn't see inside, but something about it pulled me toward it. I felt like I was drawn in, like I couldn't stop myself if I wanted to. The rule flashed through my mind, but curiosity burned brighter. Why shouldn't I go near it? Was it some old superstition that had been passed down through generations? My mind raced, but my feet moved before I could stop them. I took a few steps toward the mausoleum. The ground beneath me seemed softer, like the earth had been disturbed. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I reached the entrance and hesitated. The door creaked slightly in the wind, and I swore I heard a whisper, soft, faint, almost as if someone was calling my name. "Don't go in there," a voice inside my head whispered, but I ignored it. I took another step forward, closer to the door. My heart pounded in my chest, but my curiosity was stronger. I pushed the door just a little more, and then the whispering stopped. A chill ran down my spine. It was too quiet now, too still. I stepped back quickly, heart racing. Whatever was inside, it wasn't normal. The door slammed shut behind me with a force that made me jump. I turned and ran, not looking back. I made it to the caretaker's cabin, my breath coming in short, panicked gasps. I locked the door behind me, my hands trembling as I sat down. I didn't know what had just happened, but I knew one thing for sure. There was something wrong with this place. The rule, the warnings, the
The strange feeling that had settled over me, it was all real. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just uncovered the tip of the iceberg. What had I just disturbed? I knew I shouldn't go back. I knew I should leave and forget this whole place. But a part of me, the same part that had driven me to open that door, wanted to know more. What was in the mausoleum? Why was it so forbidden? As I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, I couldn't help but feel the pull of the graveyard, the pull of the mausoleum. Something was waiting there. I didn't know what it was, but I knew it was not going to let me leave that easily. And that's how it all began. The first night. The night I stepped inside and disturbed something that should have been left undisturbed. Something dark, something ancient. And now, it was watching me.
The next morning, I woke up to the sound of birds chirping. The sun was barely creeping over the horizon, casting long, warm rays through the trees. The graveyard was quiet again, almost peaceful, but the events of the night before hung over me like a cloud. I couldn't stop thinking about the mausoleum and the whisper I'd heard. I tried to push it out of my mind as I started my work. It was a simple job, at least that's what I thought at the time. I had been hired as the new graveyard keeper, taking over for someone who had mysteriously disappeared. The work was straightforward: keep the place tidy, maintain the graves, and make sure nothing got out of place. But the more I spent time there, the more I realized this job was far from simple. There was something off about the place. The graveyard itself was huge, stretching for what seemed like miles. In some parts, the gravestones were so old they barely stood upright, their engravings worn smooth by the passage of time. It had an eerie beauty to it, with its crooked tombstones, overgrown vines, and thick trees that loomed like silent watchers. Most people in town had forgotten about it. Few visited, and even fewer stayed long. I walked the paths between the rows of graves, cleaning up fallen branches and sweeping the dirt that had gathered in the corners. The graveyard had a kind of rhythm to it, one that I hadn't expected. The silence was so profound that every small sound seemed to be magnified. The scrape of my broom against the ground echoed through the air, making it seem like I was the only living thing in the entire place. I'd been on the job for a few hours when I saw the old man again. He was hunched over, walking slowly between the graves. His clothes were old-fashioned, faded from years of wear, and his face was lined with age, a few wisps of white hair poking out from beneath his weathered cap. He always came to the graveyard in the evening, like clockwork, and he always walked with a purpose. But there was something about him that seemed different from the others who wandered in and out of the graveyard. He didn't speak to me at first, just gave me a nod as he passed. His eyes flickered over me, as if sizing me up, and then he continued on his way. I had no idea who he was, but I had seen him there the night before. After a few minutes, he came back, this time stopping to speak. His voice was gravelly, low, and full of weight. "Don't break the rule," he said, staring at me with those cold, sharp eyes. His words hung in the air, like they carried some sort of hidden meaning. I had no idea what he was talking about, so I just nodded, unsure how to respond. "The mausoleum," he added, with a shiver in his voice. "It's not for you. Don't go near it. It's not a place for the living." I felt my blood run cold. It was the same warning the mayor had given me. I forced a smile, but inside, I was already feeling a knot tighten in my stomach. What was it about this place that made everyone so afraid? The old man didn't say anything more. He just turned and walked back toward the old mausoleum. His slow, deliberate steps were like a reminder that I was still an outsider here and that the rules were not to be ignored. I stood there for a moment, unsure what to do. I knew I should respect the warnings, keep my distance from the mausoleum, and just finish my work. But my curiosity gnawed at me. Why was everyone so afraid? Why was the mausoleum so off-limits? As the day wore on, I tried to put it out of my mind, focusing on my duties. But the shadows of the graveyard seemed longer than usual. The air felt heavier, as if the place itself was holding its breath, waiting for something. It wasn't until late afternoon when I finally heard it, the unmistakable sound of scraping metal, followed by a faint, rhythmic thud. I froze, heart pounding, the sound of my own breath filling my ears. I knew the noise wasn't the wind. It wasn't the sound of branches swaying in the trees. It came from somewhere deeper, somewhere farther inside the graveyard. My curiosity won out again. Against my better judgment, I found myself walking toward the mausoleum. The sound of scraping continued, growing louder as I approached. With each step, my heart hammered faster, the fear clawing at the back of my mind. I stopped at the edge of the mausoleum. The door was wide open now, just like last night. The air around it felt colder, thicker. It was as if the temperature had dropped by several degrees in the span of just a few seconds. I could feel the hair on the back of my neck rise, a sense of dread wrapping itself around me. I glanced inside, just for a second, and then I heard it. A voice, soft and distant, but clear as day. "Come closer." I recoiled instinctively, my heart racing. The voice, it wasn't like a person's voice. It was as if the wind itself was speaking, carrying with it an ancient, almost predatory hunger. I stepped back, my feet suddenly feeling heavy, as if the ground itself was pulling me toward that cursed place. The door creaked again, as if inviting me to enter. The whispers grew louder, and I realized with a jolt that they were coming from inside the mausoleum. The temptation to break the rule was strong. Every part of me wanted to know what was inside, to finally understand what was causing the strange atmosphere in this graveyard. But that part of me that had been listening to the warnings that had come from the mayor, from the old man, from the place itself, told me to turn away. I took a step back, slowly, and then another. The air around me seemed to relax, but that feeling in the pit of my stomach didn't go away. I could still hear the whispers, as if they were calling my name. By the time the sun began to set, the unease in the graveyard felt unbearable. The darkness was closing in, and I was beginning to realize just how much I didn't understand about this place. Why was everyone so afraid? Why was there such a heavy sense of warning around the mausoleum? I didn't know yet, but I was beginning to suspect that I had just made the mistake of a lifetime by ignoring the rules.